Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming along. I have got the microphone switched on. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. So tonight's topic is all about the Royal Agricultural College / University's historic herbarium collection. It's my current pride and passion at work, and I've been enthusing students left, right and centre about it, as well as giving a number of external talks as well. It's a topic that has really, really taken off. So many people like yourselves, when they see these specimens, they're really quite enthused and interested, and millions of questions, some of which I can answer, some of which I can't, but I will certainly do my best this evening. There'll be more time to have a look at these before we finish, and I can answer a few more questions as well once you've had time to peruse the details on some of these sheets. So the overall aim for today, the aim is to introduce what we have and our project. So it might be slightly different to some of the scientific topics you've had for your previous talks. It's a slightly different slant, but nevertheless one that most certainly counts within the category of science and indeed technology. There'll be opportunity to chat around these, and also, if I may, it would be great to take some photos this evening of maybe chatting or the group, and also I kind of store up information in terms of what questions people ask me, because it helps to inform where we might research in future or projects that we might do in future. So again, if agreeable, I might take on board some of those suggestions as we go through. But equally, if you want to put a patent on your idea, do it before, or maybe don't mention it. That would probably be good. So why are we bothering with this project? I'm sure you're converts already from seeing these, but a lot of people, and young people in particular, suffer from what's called plant blindness. Even I do, to an extent. Lots of people know about different animals. They've taught them from a young age. They recognise them. But plants, not so much so. It's a bit of a lesser knowledge, if you like. So part of it is to get out there what a herbarium actually is. And I know that you will know, but lots of people, when you mention it, they don't know what a herbarium is. So these are some of the things my students will say when they don't know. And it's fine that they don't know. We're here to teach. So one of the things they'll come up with is this. So they'll think about one of these little terrariums that you plant up. So that's one of the things that they will think of. They will also literally think about herbs. So I have had groups come in and go, oh, I was expecting some parsley. And well, it could be parsley. It's not that it can't be, but it's not just the herbs that you cook with. And then some people come up with this. They think they're going to see a big glass house. Again, they're not far off the mark. And indeed, I'm taking students to very said glass house in a week and a half's time. So it's all part and parcel of the same area of study, but it certainly helps raise that bit of awareness. Now, if we want a definition, I do like starting talks with definitions, welcome. Herbaria are usually defined thus, as some sort of systematic collection of plants that are used for study and research. The definition can be expanded from plants to plant-like organisms as well. And I think that is important, and it is missing from the Q definition, because, for example, we have here a whole folder labelled up as algae. Now, they're not all algae, actually. Some are algae, some are in fact animals, some are chromista, so they're not necessarily all algae, but that's what they were classified as back in the 1840s, or whatever the date is on the individual ones there. So not just plants, we can go a bit further. So this historic collection that belongs to the RAU dates back, indeed, as far back as 1787 is the oldest specimen that we have, collected by Dawson Turner, the eminent Victorian naturalist, when he was about 13 years old. So they started young in those days on this. They really, really did. It's a pattern I've noticed across a lot of the collectors that we have. However, the RAU connection really begins in 1845. You can see a label here from 1845 from a specimen collected on the university farm just around the corner. And it began with Samuel Pickworth Woodward. I'll talk a bit more about him later, but we can see his initials, SPW, on here. He was the first lecturer in natural history, botany, geology, those sorts of subjects. The first one here when we opened in 1845. So I think it's important to remember that this institution has been doing environmental subjects since 1845. I think we lost them a bit somewhere in the middle and now very much back again, which is good to see. Quite a lot of the collection are local, but indeed mainly from around the UK. Nearly every vice county in which botany records are collated, nearly everyone is represented across our collection. I think there are about 11 out of 113, I think there are, that are not represented, so it's pretty good. There are a few international specimens as well. So it's very interesting, and not least, as you say, they're quite beautiful. So lots of possibilities with herbaria. So why do we bother with natural science collections like this these days? And again, I'm sure you're converts, but initially some people might look at this and go, okay, it's old, it's dry, it's dusty, what's the point? And the point has very much been enlightened in maybe the last couple or 3 decades in terms of the value of these sorts of collections, not just restricted to plants, indeed animal collections, osteology collections, all sorts of different types of natural science collections. But my focus is mainly on these plants. So there's a good long list of reasons why we bother. So we have the obvious, which is taxonomy. What are these? How are they interconnected? The study of evolution is great because we have the specimen. It's not just the record, it's the physical specimen that is that old, from that place, from that date. So you've got really good concrete evidence. From that basis, we can track change. Are these plants flowering earlier? Is it warmer? Is there a change in seed setting? Is there indeed a change in geographical distribution? That can help us inform conservation work, maybe identifying what species could be reintroduced or where more ecological management could be put in place to boost existing populations. There's the kind of human greed use. What can we get out of it? What can we use these for? What medicines have they got that can cure us? What can we eat? And that's very important too. There's the ecological side of plant communities. What plants grow together and why? Has that changed? We could think about that. Making sure we do know what is linked to taxonomy, but just for pure identification purposes. I use it in teaching to help students learn different species. It's very, very helpful. And the whole idea of voucher specimens. We do have actually some type specimens, and one I definitely know of, but most of these are just voucher specimens, as in they are something somebody's collected. It isn't the specimen that stands for that species, whereas the type specimens are. But very, very good to have those. All sorts of future genetic possibilities, I'm sure, with these. I'm yet to fully explore that, but I think that will be where it does go down the line. And then the rest are kind of the softer side. History of science, which is very much where I'm at with it at the moment. I'm really interested to know why these were collected, who collected, where, and why did they collect there. There's lots of questions trying to figure out what the kind of biases are among the data that we have encased within this collection. Someone said they were beautiful. They are. We do have projects making use of these for some like greetings cards and bits of merchandise. Students have been involved with that because that's people's first impression is, gosh, they look nice. And that really, really does help. They're not dry and dusty as people might imagine, and when they see it, wow, they're quite fascinating. Teaching, that was probably part of the original point of collecting these. I think this older collection on this side, I'm not sure it was collected for teaching per se. I think it was collected for genuine interest in the science of the collecting, and then possibly has been used for teaching afterwards. The other collection on this side, which is 100 years younger, I think was done for teaching. We have kind of multiples of some specimens, like enough to give out to a class, for example. So I think that's why we have those. And then outreach. Well, here we are, okay? So it definitely covers all of a dozen reasons why we are interested with this. The major piece of work going on is, if there was a fire, it's gone. It has happened to other collections, and we wouldn't want a fire anyway, would we? But we certainly wouldn't want to lose this. So it's about digitising these collections, to preserve that information as best you can, pictorially, but also to give greater access to people. The aim is to get it online so it can be viewed and used for research and teaching, indeed the world over, or just anybody that wants to have a look at it. That's part of the importance. So rather than it being hidden, I want it to be coming to life for people to appreciate. So to that end, I've spent an awful lot of time, as have some of my students who have volunteered on the project, and some external volunteers as well, particularly from Gloucestershire Naturalist Society, who have in part funded the project generously and been extremely generous with time and expertise. So we have an enormous data set, which has taken a lot of work. It is literally typing up all these labels from about 5,000 sheets, which have about 8-ish thousand specimens across them. So we've transcribed the scientific name as it appears. I've cross-matched that with the most accepted common name. And we've worked with botanist Claire and Mark Kitchen to check the identity of all these species. Because I'm not a botanist, I couldn't possibly do all of these, whereas they can. They sit there and just know what they're looking at instantly. So that kind of expertise is very valuable, and they will be credited, as will some other experts who have looked at our mosses and our lichens. I've not found anybody yet to deal with these folders suspiciously marked algae. So if you do know anybody who's good on marine algae, zoophytes, etc., please do let me know. So as part of it, we then record the date it was collected, the country code using the international standard country digits, GB, or whatever it happens to be, PT for Portugal, whatever. We transcribe the place name, which takes some doing. I'm very good at reading messy handwriting. It's not messy, it's beautiful actually, but it is in cursive script. And our students really struggle to read this. It's quite interesting. Their eye is not in for cursive handwriting. So they get into it once I get them going. But it's quite a struggle. And some of it is difficult to read. Depends who's written it, to be honest. Woodward's very clear. Other people are less clear, to say the very least. So we put down the place name and who collected it. And I've done a bit of research on some of these people as to who they were, what their status was, their qualifications, etc. Lots of vicars, lots of academics, but also people you don't expect. There's one chap in here who's a very, very poor baker, and there's a whole book about how poor and difficult his life was, but he would trek 20 miles to collect these plants. So I'd like to read around him a little bit more. So it's very, very, very interesting. Once we've got the place name, we then georeference that to decimal latitude and longitude so that we can eventually map all of these. There's no such thing as this in their day. They didn't have a coding system to write down. All you've got is effectively an address that just says, Bourneton or Drewswood Devizes. Okay, so you don't have a grid reference or a lat long or anything like that. So you do need a bit of a dollop of geographical knowledge and common sense, but also good to triangulate with other people who might go, oh, but that place name also exists in Lincolnshire. And so by those means, you start to work out where individuals were collecting, and you know what's plausible for them. So were they close by there on that date, that year? Or were they miles away? They couldn't possibly. So you start to work these things out. There will always be more to correct and find out in this data set, which some people find quite uneasy. Oh, why don't you know? It's so much that we don't know. It's going to take maybe decades to get this absolutely perfect. Somebody else will know that there's a different place name elsewhere, or recognise something that we've just not spotted. You give an uncertainty radius based on, again, your common sense of the location. So we can't pinpoint that it's exactly bang on that dot there, but it's somewhere around Drew's Wood at Devizes, so that could be some distance. We also put the place name down to the Vice County for botanical recording and the name of that Vice County there. So it gives us a nice easy view of where these tally. Once we've done all that transcription, we've been busy digitising using actually quite simple equipment, pretty much the same as Natural History Museum use. So I went on a training day there and they showed me their equipment and copied it actually. So it's just it's a stand, a camera stand. It's a photo box with reflective sides. I've had to cut a bigger hole in it, and then the camera pokes down through that, and it takes high resolution photos of each sheet. There's also a scale bar on there. It looks like a ruler, but it cost £480. And I've never bought such an expensive ruler. I'm not lending that one out, but it is calibrated for the colours. Somebody in here will know a lot more about how that's done than I do, but it's called the golden thread, and it means that our collection can then be cross-referenced to any other institution globally who's used that same scale and colour chart. So it gives an extra layer of quality to our data. So Natural History Museum, they told me they'd spent £45,000 on a machine to do this, all neatly lit and does it all for you, and they said it just didn't work. It was overcorrecting for everything, slightest difference in the outside light and it was going haywire. So they had their maintenance team knock up something like this, and that's what they've been using. So expensive isn't always better. I'm really pleased to hear that as well, because I haven't got £45,000 for this machine. So there's a whole then now massive bank of images which we've had to give codes to. I have recoded them actually since I screenshotted that with a unique identifier for this institution as well. But we've covered the folders that they're in and then the actual sheets themselves. They've had to have barcodes on the front, which you would have noticed because of course you can't tip them. So it does detract somewhat from the sheets, but they are printed on archival paper from a museum supply place. So we've done the best we can to make that as sympathetic as possible. Having looked online, even Darwin's herbarium has barcodes all over it. And I thought, it's a bit heartbreaking to have to do that, but if we can't connect it back to its information, it's not of as much use. So we have had to barcode those. The ultimate aim is to then load said enormous data set and image bank into GBIF, Global Biodiversity Information Facility. Relatively new, still very much taking off, but it is now the go-to place for biodiversity records, so for any type of biodiversity. And it's free to access it. We do have to belong to it to be allowed to upload our data. So I hope by maybe this time next year, we will be in a position to have got all of our information into here. That's the end goal. So it will be searchable along with all the other universities and organisations who are already in there. Those who are still adding, I mean, Natural History Museum are continually adding to this, and all those institutions that just haven't discovered this yet. I reckon there's loads of this out there. It just is all over the place and not captured. It would be exciting to see it all in one place. So eventually we will be able to search like this. So these are not ours, but it gives you an indication of what it will look like when ours are loaded in. They will be searchable using the database. There's also now a chatbot that will search this for you. More on chatbots later, but it's a new way of searching, which I haven't quite grasped. I quite like the old-fashioned way. Even the students quite like the old-fashioned way. I had them compare it the other day. So, but we'll see. We may all change in the future. So what have we got? What have we got? Quite a lot of stuff. So around, I think there's probably more like 5,000 sheets than the 4.5 I've put on there, because we have found some more. When we demolished our old labs, I don't know if you've seen because it's dark, the wooden building has gone. Over there, do you know the one? Okay, 1960s labs, that has been demolished, and we've got new labs in our other block. And in there we found more specimens in the loft. So some of these figures are now slightly out. I just haven't had a chance to go through all this new stuff and see exactly how much of it that we do have. Most of it's agricultural specimens, getting a bit further away from my main area, but nevertheless, it's going to be very, very valuable and probably more appealing to many of our students, perhaps, than some of the things that are here. So there's the old herbarium, like this side, and the new herbarium, that side. They are literally labelled old and new herbarium on the cabinet. So this one's got a label on that says old, and this one says new herbarium. So somebody, I think I know which lecturer it was, probably a few decades ago, has sifted these. They've had a good go at this beforehand, and they've put them into the cabinets. They're too tightly packed, for sure. We need better storage. But they've done the job. They're in good condition. They have done the job, to be fair, but it could be better and a bit less packed. There are other bits and pieces in their smaller collections that perhaps people have sent us. We've got some plants from Poland/Belarus from just before the war. And the lady wanted to send them to us. There was some connection with the institution. I forget what it was. I couldn't read the labels, so I asked any staff to maybe speak or read Polish. Can I have a look at these for me? And a lady from finance came forward. She was Polish, and she saw the specimens, and she was nearly crying because the place is where she was from, and it had been lost to Poland and annexed into Belarus, and it was emotional for her. So you do get these strong reactions to this. It was really quite something. She's done a great job of reading it for me and transcribing all the information. So we've got that sort of thing. It covers all sorts of taxa, particularly Woodward's collection on this side. He really covers most things. Got a bit of specialism in ferns. That seems to be his thing. You know, everybody has a thing, and that seems to be his. But it's pretty broad. I think he was doing it for self-learning and development. The new herbarium, all the stuff on this side, tends to be more, yes, wild plants, but the wild plants of agricultural land predominantly. So there's a grassland and cropland. Lots on grasses, as you might imagine, and any other plants that are useful in agriculture. So this one's definitely more agricultural focused, not uniquely, but more so, I would say. We have a few international specimens. I think there's a fern from Madeira in amongst that collection that I've put on there. We have got some from New Zealand. What else? Norway, USA, Jamaica. So a few different places. But it's not one of those collections where, you know, a Victorian naturalist has gone out and conquered the world and brought the stuff back, you know, gung ho. It's not like one of those. And actually, that's quite unusual because we've got things like Daisy, okay, and I think that's great because often people forget to collect the little plants and the weeds, and that's valuable. So very interesting choice of material. So that's the typical state of the old collection, very antiquated, very beautiful daffodils there, we like those. And the new, that's the exact one I've got over there, which is the poppy, which I brought just because it was topical, but it's also a very nice specimen, and it is from the campus on Steddings Field, so I know exactly where that has come from. So, to the people. Woodward. So I say he was me, but it's not. I am him. Okay, I'm kind of in that line of the professors of all things planty at the RAU over time. He wasn't here for long. He stayed here for a couple of years before they rearranged the professorships, and he went onwards and worked at the British Museum actually after that. But this is his collection, and he didn't live very long. In fact, he was my age when he died, which is quite a sobering thought. And a few years after his death, his son allowed the institution to buy the collection. So it was bought, and there's documentary evidence of that in his memoir. So we know how it got here, probably like maybe 1870s, roughly, something like that. So it's been here all that time. Mostly collected by himself, but also people who have sent specimens to him. So there's a big botanical exchange network going on with Samuel Pickworth Woodward. And one of those was our friend Charles Darwin. So thanks again to digitisation of letters, which are available online. You can read their correspondence. Darwin's literally asking Woodward, what do you think? I should be very glad of any criticisms on the origin. Is his book. They've exchanged books. Samuel Pickwick Woodward wrote one on marine mollusks. Darwin was writing the origin. And they asked each other for criticism. And it's amazing to think that kind of input has come from here to there. It's quite amazing. So he was definitely in touch with the big naturalists of the day. And I don't think he's a big naturalist himself because nobody knows about him. So he's been in a drawer here since 1870, but I want to change that. That's part of the work. So it's nice to find these ones that literally have RAC. Ewan's piece, that's a particular field, 1846. So he spent a lot of time here working on his collection. I think I'd get absolutely killed if I spent that much time faffing around with my sheets. I spend enough as it is, but he definitely spent a lot more. And I'm glad he did. Very glad he did. So that's Woodward. He was succeeded, which makes me somewhat doubt this story about the restructuring of the professors. You just don't know what earth went on. He was succeeded by James Buckman, who is more famous. And he was here for a bit longer. And again, he had a botanic garden here. It's no longer here. It's near where our Arboretum still stands. In fact, there's a building there, it's called Garden House. So it's a bit of a sad end. And Buckman also corresponded with Darwin, and so on. It turns out, if you read through the letters, students were playing pranks in his botanic garden. They were sowing grass seeds in there that he wasn't supposed to be growing and messing up his results and ruining his research. So all this has come through from the letters. And I mean, honestly, they were naughty in the 1850s. I mean, you can't get away with doing that. So Buckman, however, got in trouble. He upset the principal of the university with his evolutionary views and all this Darwinism business, and he got the sack for it. And they destroyed the botanic garden in the form that it was in. So he met a sticky end. There's lots of argumentative letters between him and the principal. If you ever read the history of the RAU book, it's quite entertaining, to say the least. But it was a bit cutthroat in those days. We think it's cutthroat now. I think it might have been worse in academia in those days. But it's nice to have his particular specimen. He's got a lovely pasque flower here. There are quite a few of his that aren't signed, but he's got such distinctive handwriting. And I can tell by the locations compared to his specimens in other people's collections that they are his. So Darwin, Buckman, Woodward, all connected. We have big names like father and son, Hooker of Kew, of course. So I'm really pleased to find these. There's probably 5 or 6 between the father and son across the whole collection, but they're great finds where you do come across them, tending to be they're quite obscure little bits and pieces, actually, and often from Scotland. So very, very good to have them. They're probably the biggest names that we have. We have some female collectors, quite a few, actually. It was kind of a respectable hobby, as long as you didn't get too scientific, apparently. I'm not sure I believe that, really. These are great. So quite a few women collectors in here who clearly were women of science, and they've done a good job. So I don't buy this thing that it's just done because it's just respectable. They were doing it properly. So Mary Beaver's well known. She's got specimens in various other collections, including the Fielding Druce Herbarium at Oxford. She's got quite a few bits of marine algae in that particular packets. But we have quite a few other people. Mary Russell Anna Russell / Worsley, married name, maiden name. She's got quite a few. She was well known in her day. So it's good to see a variety of people in this old collection. More recently, so for this side, this represents these two here. We have Di Barling. He was here for a long time. Anybody know of or remember? Yeah? A character from what I've read, is that true? Was he popular?
He was a very nice chap.
Yeah. I've read that he was just loved by all and very entertaining in his lectures. So most of these are his. I think the slightly rounded handwriting seems to fit with his character, and from my study of it, those I think are his, because occasionally they are signed. The other is John Stevens, who's the laboratory superintendent. This is one of his, I can tell by the handwriting. I don't know, he's written it. It's been sent it by LG Short, but that's John Stevens' handwriting. He sometimes signs his. And between the two of them, they've amassed quite a collection of about 2,000 specimens. They're both here for a very, very long time. And I think it was either one or both of these who had done that pre-sifting and put them into the cabinets and ordered them. There's a bit of a catalogue, but it's incomplete. It names the species, but doesn't tell you how many or where or when they were collected. But it did give us a little bit of a leg up, thanks to their work. We could at least estimate what we'd got before we set out on the task. So, yeah, it's good to have this sort of continuity of collecting. I'd like to reinvigorate it one day. Give me some more time. So, the fun bits. Okay, so we've got a lot of outreach and projects. We've had a lot of take-up, as I said. We've been on ITV News. I'm amazed how many people are still awake at 10 o'clock that say, were you on the news last night? I was like, oh yeah, I was in bed, but what were you doing watching it? So they came and interviewed us here in the labs, which was great. Online news channel I did an interview for last year, maybe the year before, last year, time flies. Quite a lot of press articles, local press, Western Daily Press, etc. They printed the story about Buckman's run-in with the principal. Lots of student projects. So up on the left here we've got Ben. Ben is currently studying for a Masters by Research on the collection, and his Masters by Research is fees funded by Gloucestershire Naturalist Society. So that's been a real bonus for Ben. So he's on the go at the moment. We've had this letter here came from an outreach group. We have sometimes groups of disadvantaged children come here. They're here to see what university is, raise aspiration, and they've made some specimens of their own. They are real, but they're kind of mock-ups. I wouldn't put them in a collection sort of thing, but they look at the style of it. They get some cutting out bits, and they make it and they label it. They write their name on it, and sometimes they put like Sir in front of their name, which is really good. And they give themselves a few post-nominals because they've been looking at these. And I just think, gosh, that's really sweet. I don't know if that's the impression I want them to take away from it, but they obviously feel that they want to do that, and I think that's quite nice. This is a master's student group that came to a workshop in the labs with me. So we do a lot of this kind of thing. It's just a snippet, really. There's Claire and Mark working away with the students on the botanical identification, giving up their Wednesday afternoons for what must have amounted to nearly a year, I think. Des Marshall working on the mosses or the bryophytes, actually, to be more accurate. So yeah, very valuable. Not expertise that everybody can tap into. And then moreover, a slight stretch, my work was sufficiently good on this for the university to nominate me for Buckingham Palace Garden Party, and the King himself selected me to meet. So that was great. So I'm shaking hands with His Majesty there. So I think it might be a little bit of a jump, but it was mainly based on this work I've been doing that the university wanted to put me forward. So that was really nice. And of course, His Majesty is interested in all of this, and one day I'd quite like to show it to him in person. Should have been invited him, shouldn't we? So other bits and pieces we've been working on. We have made our own chatbot, working with the Natural History Museum, funded by themselves and Department for Culture, Media and Sport. It's a fun chatbot, but with factual basis. It runs off, I was trained in ChatGPT, but it runs off our data set. So everything that it gives you is factually based, which was important to us. But it talks to you a bit like a Victorian letter. Oh, hello, dear friend. Would thou like to see my specimen? That tells you something about your specimen. So that's been a really nice project that we've nearly drawn to completion on that. There's the aesthetics that I mentioned, the cards. We want to make some sort of bags with the designs on as well for sale in the shop and maybe a few places around town in due course. But students have been really good, really into it. So there's all sorts of spin-offs, and there's so many other things in my head, to say the least, especially in terms of what else we need to do. first up is dealing with these loft finds that we discovered. So I need to get those digitised along with the rest of it. And just when you think you've finished, a load of stuff comes out the loft. I do want to have a room where people can come here for workshops, outreach, education, with some display facilities, maybe something almost like Victorian themed that would be quite in keeping. So we'll await, I think, some funding applications for something like that, which would be really, really good, really nice to have. And we've got other stuff. It goes on. I think in total, as an estimate, we must have got around 80,000-ish natural history items at the university. In particular, the biological slides, about 20,000 of those. Probably about 20,000 invertebrates in ethanol, some of which are labelled, some aren't, but it needs sorting through. I've had a look. I haven't been through it. We've got an amazing seed collection, circa 1900, from Augustus Volker. He was a lecturer in chemistry here, and his son also was an agricultural chemist. So these lovely little Victorian glass jars with various seeds of crops in them. I've looked at them, but again, they need cataloguing. It's on my radar. There's some taxidermy. I'm not too excited about the taxidermy. It's not in that good a condition. There's a few bits left here. There's some ethnobotanical items around things like cotton crops and flax and other useful bits and pieces along those lines. And we have a living collection. We do have an arboretum, although not many people would know it because it's not labelled. So one of my probably earlier projects among that list, I've got a colleague also interested, is to get some kind of display board and tree labels and things to make that a functioning resource rather than just a place that needs mowing far too closely very often. It'd be good to have it actually educationally manageable. So there's lots I'd like to do. There's lots I'd like to do with this. So I'd like to be collecting. There's possible genetic applications of this. Yeah, many, many more things I'd like to do. I'd also quite like to have a project where I get people to tell me if they've seen that plant in that place these days. If you get that information out there, people could get back to you. That would be quite nice to do. So yeah, much afoot. Probably more than will see me through a career, I would have said. There's a lot to do there. So we have to thank various funders as well for the bits and pieces that have been put in to this, because I do need that to be allowed to do it, if that makes sense. I've put a ton of my own time in, I really have, but I like it, so that's fine. But this also gives me the sort of rationale to say, well, if I put that much time in, they've given me this much money, can we proceed with this? And the university is very much behind it, they really like it. So it's a good positive for the university as well. So those are all the bits and pieces. I don't know if you want the references at the end, but they are, and the ethical approval number, just for completeness sake. But that is where we are. So I'll draw breath and see if anybody has any questions. And if you'd like to look again in a minute, perhaps. Right.
I was wondering if you were to compare your 200-year-old specimens with a new specimen as of yesterday, for a particular species, would you, or are you likely to find any differences due to some evolutionary process, due to perhaps global warming, or will they be exactly the same?
I don't know the answer because I haven't even done it. But I think the answer would depend on species. So if it's something with a short generation time, then possibly yes, it's had time to adapt. Something with a longer generation of time, not so much. So I suppose you also need to think about whether it's phenotype or genotype that has changed. So there's possibilities there, but I suspect possibly the answer could well be yes.
Would it be worth
good to have a look. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And people are. But yes, I'd like to.
You volunteering?
Yeah, add it to my list. But yes. I mean, that's one of the beauties of this, is that you could answer that question properly. Yeah.
Has the technology changed from 100 years ago in producing some? I think that's really what you were interested in.
Okay, the technology in terms of the mounting. And
would you look, if you looked at one 100 years ago and you looked at one a year ago, could you tell the difference?
I could visually. I don't know if it would be in terms of, say, leaf size, without doing more in-depth measurements of it. Probably having to destroy it, in fact, to be able to do
So what
that.
you're saying that the technology in producing new samples hasn't varied much.
I wouldn't have thought so. No, you still have to have I suppose, a press over here when people still use things like this, literally, you know, like this.
Oh, okay.
So no, that hasn't. If that's helpful, it hasn't changed a great deal. You do just have to sort of dry them, keep repressing them on dry paper until they're okay to mount. So I can tell difference just by the pattern of the thing, but from an evolutionary point of view, yeah, that would be a bigger study, I think.
Could you take the DNA
You could do that.
and compare them?
You can do that. Yeah, it has been done. You can get it readily from such old specimens. There is something called the Barcode of Life out there. I think National Museum Wales have done their collection, and I would love to do this on my list. But essentially, it's tested, and you get a barcode to pop on it that then tallies with the database, tells you all about it. Yeah, yeah. I'm no geneticist, but I would like to do that. I really would.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Some years ago, we were lucky enough to have a behind-the-scenes view of the Kew Herbarium, and they were showing us the great big trays that still have the London smog in them, that they had seeped into the trays. Did you have anything like that in your old?
Not particularly. It certainly has a smell about it, of sort of dust. And I've been handling these with bare hands. I will wash them afterwards, but I do have guests use gloves to handle them, not for the specimens. I know the research now is that for antique items, you don't wear gloves because you're more likely to harm it. On the other hand, if the antique item might harm you, that's different. So these may well probably have been treated with mercury and or cyanide, which is why they're in such good condition. We have tested them with UV. Some of them do iridesce a little bit, but not very much. So we think the risk is low. Natural History Museum, who we consulted, said they don't bother with gloves because the risk is so low, except when they've got specimens from Chernobyl. We haven't got any of those. There's not been much either. There's a couple that have had what's called the herbarium beetle, but not many. We're really, really lucky with that. So they've not been eaten, which makes me think they probably have been well treated at some point. Nice at Cuba.
Has there been a sort of an unusual find, a previously extinct, or a totally new species?
That would be cool. There's definitely one that is extinct in this country, which is the small burr parsley. It's an arable wildflower, so it's one of those ones that's just gone because of the changes to farming. It's not very exciting. It's of the carrot family, basically. It's a bit uninteresting in its way, but the fact it's extinct in Britain, and we have one. I think there might be others, but what I haven't done yet is that massive data set. It needs another column with the current red list status on it. So that's a job for another day. Or maybe AI can help me. Yeah, I don't know. It might be able to. And so I suspect there might be more. No brand new species, but we've had new records for certain locations. Some subspecies of, is it a Taraxacum? Yes, for Somerset, I think it was. Yeah, there probably will be more. There will be more.
We had a question by was there once upon a time a place in the main building which held these samples, or was it just
Yeah, you're right to ask that question. I said I wanted a room here. We used to have one.
Was it in the museum?
It was in the Kenneth Russell room, which was the museum. I don't know when the museum ceased to be. I need to do some more research on that, but that's where this and other things would have been held. So I'd like to reinstate that. I don't think they're going to let me have one of their very best rooms back. I tried asking today. We'll see what comes back. So thank you for that question.
You mentioned you've got a good collection of agricultural plants, etc. And also talk about climate change. I mean, there are other departments here at the university who are starting to look at those to say, well, these could be useful for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are. I have to say, the agricultural bit I know less about personally. However, in general, all of these things, if you think about the Millennium Seed Bank, the Svalbard Seed Bank, which is more for agricultural storage of seeds, then yes, definitely the value's there. And even those jars of seeds, they might be viable. They might well be. So yes, I think there is. And I could do with a research buddy probably on the agricultural side, just to bring the expertise together to have a proper look at it. We've got lots of ears of wheat in little glass tubes and jars of different seeds, and we've got some mounted specimens. There's all sorts. Yeah, should be interesting when we get there.
You mentioned mercury
Yeah.
ago. I'm curious, if you took a sample today,
Yeah.
what would your technique, how would it differ
Yeah.
from what people were doing 200, 300 years ago?
We'd probably freeze them. That would be the way of keeping pests off. So you periodically freeze them. Other than that, I don't think there's much difference. These have been so well done. They're strapped on. They're glued with something. I'm not quite sure what they would use, but obviously it would have been a natural glue. We would definitely get the acid-free archival paper. I imagine there's probably just was in those days. I don't suppose they had all the nasties that we put in it now. So I doubt there's a huge difference.
Probably animal hide glue, I would guess.
Animal hide glue.
Because
Yeah, that would
they
make
used it a
sense.
lot for.
Okay. Yeah, good.
You know,
That's
and
useful to know. Yeah.
I've still got flower collections from my childhood.
Yeah. I've got a big long daisy chain I made when I was 6. But did I put the date on it? Did I put a label on it? No, I did not. So if I could tell my 6-year-old self to sort it out and put a label on it, I would. So, yeah.
It's my maiden speech, so I hope it works. I'm interested in evolution and the effect of life cycle.
Okay.
What is the typical life cycle of these plants?
Really variable. Really variable. I mean, the more weedy they are, the more rapid the life cycle, the generation time. Others, more of the ancient woodland indicator plants like Herb Paris, are thought to have a life cycle of 90 years. Papers do say. So quite variable, I would say. There are a few woody species in here, which obviously takes the equation a bit further out, but mostly not woody species.
I guess it's why dogs have evolved so rapidly, because they only live for 10 years.
Exactly.
Those humans.
Exactly. So it does depend what you're dealing with. Can't think of anything that would be exceptionally long lived apart from a few tree specimens and maybe that Herb Paris. Might be others when I look into them. That's more columns for my spreadsheet on life traits, isn't it? So I need to do that. Yeah. But that would be interesting. Be up my street to research it. Yeah, good.
Any more
Bits
questions?
and bobs.
Well,
Okay.
thank you very much indeed.
That's all right, no, my
Dr. Hemmings,
pleasure.
and I'm sure people will
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
come and have a look.
Yeah, come and have a look. I'd stay for a few questions if you've got them while they're out here. We could take some photos. It'd be really nice if you want to do that. It'd be good. Yeah. Thank you.